We now move on to our panel discussion, where we will discuss AI-driven urban evolution in building smarter cities of tomorrow. Joining us on the panel are Ms. Nina Hovnanian, Chief Executive Officer at Hovnanian International, Mr. Tigran Avinyan, Mayor of Yerevan, Mr. Shant Hovnanian, economist, Mr. Hazem Galal, Senior Partner at PwC, and Ms. Jacqueline Karazianan, co-founder and CEO at Learning Architects. Our moderator for this discussion will be Mr. Stefan Lucas, founding CEO of FinTech Armenia.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to our panel called AI-Driven Urban Evolution, Building Smarter Cities of Tomorrow. A neat transition to the Mayor of Yerevan's talk just now about Yerevan and it becoming a smarter city. So I wanted to introduce our great panelists here present on the stage today. Thank you so much for joining us. Jacqueline is co-founder and CEO at Learning Architects. Hazem has joined us from Dubai, where he's a senior partner and industry executive working on international smart cities. Thank you so much for joining us from abroad. Shant Hovnanian, a true legend in Armenia and the US in real estate, golf clubs, and smart city strategy, especially with the SEZ concept that he's championing with Armenia. Tigran Avinyan, of course, Mayor of Yerevan, doesn't need an introduction. And Nina Hovnanian, I think familiar to everyone here. Thank you for joining us. Okay, so let's start with the first question. So can you name and comment on a few examples of the world's best and most innovative smart cities, explaining why you think these cities are leaders in this area? I'm thinking, apart from naming a few examples, please try and explain why these cities are becoming more cognitive and interconnected platforms within the global ecosystem. So maybe we start with Hazem.
Thank you, Stefan, and pleased to be here in Yerevan for the first time. I've been asked this question for the past 11 years, which is the time I've been working with smart cities globally. And you see different cities that excel in certain areas. So I personally like a lot of the things that Singapore, for example, has done. Obviously, Singapore as a city nation, the governance is much simpler. And they've done amazing things like virtual Singapore. We're actually following up on what the mayor was presenting early on. They have managed actually to create an amazing set of GIS layers and a digital twin so that every single decision about the planning and the operations of the city is actually being made using this digital platform. And it allows them to simulate how the city would operate in different modes. For example, Chinese New Year versus hosting a Formula One. And they are able to predict in advance the different sort of like heat maps in terms of traffic, in terms of crowd management and all of that, and deal with it in a proactive way. I'm also a fan of some of the things that Seoul in South Korea has been doing, especially when it comes to social inclusion. So, for example, one of the use cases they have launched in the recent past is a bus, an autonomous bus that operates between 2 and 6 a.m. And this bus is offered as a service for all of these office cleaning crew that wouldn't otherwise find public transportation. And it's a good way of providing social value to the working class, but also testing the concept of autonomous buses in less busy traffic conditions. More closer to where I live in the Middle East, Dubai has been amazing in actually combining private sector data sets with public sector data. So they are at the point right now where they're able to profile the behaviors of all incoming tourists in terms of how soon before their vacation they book their flights by combining hotel data, airline data, credit card data, and roaming data. So they understand that when a Brit for example, comes to Dubai, they prefer to spend, this time in the shopping mall, and then they use this in promotional campaigns and so forth. Other cities in Europe, of course, like Copenhagen and Helsinki, have done amazing things when it comes to mobility. And of course, we're seeing also greenfield cities or new cities that are being designed from scratch to become fully cognitive. And I would give the example of NEOM in the Middle East. What does cognitive mean as compared to smart? Cities started with digital transformation, and then they evolved to smart, where you've installed some IoT and all of that, but it was still technology-driven and push-driven and not very citizen-centric. Cognitive is different. It's predictive, it's analytical, it's citizen-centric, and I'm going to talk more about this later on.
Fascinating. Thank you so much, Hazem. What a great comprehensive response on your part. The mic is back. Interesting, you started touching on the point of data, customer profiling, and AI, which leads on to question 2 for today's panel. Let's point this one at Tikran to start off with. So how can governments and their city planning partners make better use of technology, specifically AI, to make cities smarter in the future? And can you also comment on the role of SEZs and platforms like GIS platforms and others? We'd love to hear Tikran, followed by Hazem and maybe Shant. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Stefan. Well, I've briefly introduced what Yerevan has already done with the GIS systems. So practically these systems give us the opportunity to represent different layers of maps, virtual maps of the city with different kind of content and information. And specifically, these layers give us a general picture of what is going on in the city. For instance, I talked about the air quality, the environmental layer, which we kind of gather the information from 130 sensors. And I don't know if everyone knew, but the air quality in Yerevan is quite good. And we, for many years, believed that the air quality, the dust saturation, is very high in Yerevan. That is absolutely not true. So this kind of technology gives us the real picture of what is going on in the city, and particularly these GIS systems, of course, with their particular layers, they give the information on their layer, but those layers combined give a completely different level of information, a different depth of information, which makes the decision making very much informed, very much kind of in-depth analyzed. And this is what is the best about those tools. And the important part is that you don't manually kind of input the information into these systems. The information comes either from these IoTs or from the business processes that are generated throughout, I don't know, this or that. But practically, this is nothing manually inputted into the system. As of about the use of AI, so I talked about the LiDAR systems, and just imagine a car that is going through the streets of Yerevan, and this LiDAR technology kind of grasps all the information about the surroundings. So it sees the road, it sees the defects on the road, it sees the garbage, it sees not permitted construction. And it gives the red lights to the system, to the particular department that needs to do something about that. So that is one of the good ways of using the AI technologies in the city. And that is what we are planning to do already next year. So this is something that we already have planned. We're now planning to acquire the technology, and we will have that technology probably next year. And practically, all these technologies are just good for one thing. They give the decision makers quite depth of analytics and all the decisions are kind of very much informed.
Thank you so much, Tigran. Fascinating. And great to see the scope and depth of digital transformation happening in Yerevan. I would say thanks to your leadership and your team, so thank you. Let's transition to the next question, which is a huge theme in the West. I've personally interacted with this a lot in my corporate background with the US, Asia Pacific, and Europe and London, which is the topic of ESG, climate change, and the green economy. Huge area, so cannot stress enough how much we need to do more as a country and a nation on this side of things. So, given what I just said, ESG, climate change, green economy is definitely transforming the way international investments are structured and invested in infrastructure, technology, etc. So across this broad spectrum of business these days. So how would you best suggest cities of the future become greener? What are the key trends? What are the key risks? What are the key changes coming our way? I'd like Jacqueline to start this one, please.
This is a very vast topic, and I think when we talk about smart cities, we have also to talk about smart citizens and people who are skilled, prepared, not only to be part of the smart city, but also to organize it, create new services, products, etc. So the first time I heard about AI and how computation was going to change our environment, society, governance, education was in the early 80s when I joined a group of scientists, two of them who were the founding fathers of artificial intelligence, and they created the Media Lab that was addressing exactly this question, how all these different changes are going to happen in the different domains of knowledge, of our life, our learning, work, and how they were going to interact. And there was a book that came out of the lab in '95 by Negroponte that was Being Digital. So today we are being digital, and a lot of the predictions at the time are that looked like science fiction, because already at that time they talked about a computer that was filling a floor that would be as small as a little object that you would put in your pocket or maybe on the corner of your eyeglasses. And I remember the newspapers of Le Monde saying that Professor Papert was like Professor Tournesol in the cartoon Tintin, the genius who imagines amazing things. But today it's a reality. So out of all these sciences that were disruptive and changed a lot of things we take for granted, digital learning, online platforms, global collaboration, all these also have their tools and their environment that actually I'm happy to say we brought to Armenia a few years ago. And it's now also a foundation called FabLab Armenia Foundation that teaches young people to embed artificial intelligence to every product, service that they imagine, and that is at the service of people and for the good of humanity. But I can talk about this a bit later in more details.
Fantastic.
But education, I would say, is the glue to making all these domains work in harmony and creating the new workforce that we need.
Fantastic. I know you're very active in this space. Thanks for your insight, Jacqueline. So let's continue on the topic of the green economy and specifically hone in on energy. Energy transition, green energy is huge. So what is being done globally and in Armenia for better, smarter energy usage in cities of the future? How about we start with Tigran and then Shant and maybe Hazem?
So, since 2018, there was a strategy put in place about the green energy. Particularly, we had planned to have around 1,000 megawatts of solar energy in the country. And practically, I think we're very close to that number currently. But specifically, if we're talking about the city itself, so the city is a huge consumer of energy, and the city is planning to build their own green energy generation systems, be it solar or be it wind, and practically the now energy market, the freeing the market, which is in process, and we have pretty, a free market in terms of the energy market. So it makes it interesting for even the city to have their own kind of generation of this energy, this makes sense to kind of build your own solar panel systems, which probably we might need around from 4 to 5 megawatts at least. So in general, I think Armenia is quite advanced on that topic, and our energy systems are pretty diversified, which makes it secure, and it will make even better if we go into the wind energy, which now is being investigated and being kind of researched by the R2E2 fund. And there is a pilot, as far as I know, that is going to happen this year or next year, which will give us a new niche in the green energy sector.
Fascinating. Thank you, Tikran. Any other comments from the panel on green energy? Shant.
Shot at it. My name is Shant Hovnanian, and we have, as a family, built infrastructure in the United States and here in Armenia, and starting with my grandfather, we're celebrating our 100th year in building roads, infrastructure, housing, and all different types of buildings. Many people ask me why I came to Armenia. 27 years ago, my father bought a piece of property from the government here in Armenia. It's called Vahakni. And my sister was the first resident, Nina was the first resident in Vahakni. My mom and dad moved here, and for the last quarter of my life, I decided to dedicate it to Armenia and building out our vision for Vahakni. Let me say, in terms of green, we have implemented a green sustainability program in Vahakni. Roughly 20% of our electricity today is generated from Yerevan's largest solar installation within the city limits. And we hope that is about 3/4 of a megawatt, which was the limit at the time we were building it. We would like to, those limits have now been lifted due to the vision of the government, and now we're allowed to implement many more types of sustainable energy. We're also going to we want to harness the wind that Armenia has because of its high altitude and the mountains, the difference between the heat or the coolness of the mountains and the heat in the valley. That's what creates the wind flows in Yerevan. We want to harness that energy. We also want to have a 2-for-1 platform for waste to energy. We have investigated and want to emulate the waste to energy programs in Copenhagen, the Copenhills project, and in Singapore, which uses waste for building materials for roads and buildings. We plan in our special economic zone that we have been discussing with the government for the last several years. And the waste energy is a component of what is needed for us to embrace AI. AI, or any kind of information technology, uses a lot of energy. We want to implement the world's 10th largest data center within the Vahakni SEZ.
Wow.
So we really see an opportunity of making Armenians relevancy rating, which we need for many things strategically, especially peace. We need to raise that relevancy, and we need to do something big.
Sounds great.
Thanks.
Thanks so much, Sean, and we'll look into that project. Thanks for the deck that you shared with me, and I would love to look into it. Hazem, any comments before we go on to the next question?
So smart energy is one of the most important domains, in a smart city. And we've seen AI enable a lot of use cases which previously were not possible. Smart grids basically are at the heart of them. You have the analysis being enabled by AI and other analytical tools in order to start looking at the data of usage, be it in factories, residential, and so forth. And if you are a city that can enjoy different types of energy sources, you are able to analyze all of this data as an energy provider or as a city regulator and plan what is the best mix of those different sources of energy, be it solar, wind, traditional, based on the usage patterns, and not only be able to offer the right mix of energy, but also to incentivize to balance that through pricing tools that you would have. So smart grids are only going to be enabled to better plan and operate smart grids through AI. The other thing which is quite interesting as well is EV charging and the EV ecosystems in cities. So again, how do you roll out an electric vehicle charging network? How do you link it with the current network? How do you change the mix again to from traditional vehicles into cleaner fleets is also enabled by AI. And there are so many other use cases, but in the interest of time, I'll get back to you.
Thanks, Hazem. Fascinating, very insightful. Given your global experience based out of Dubai with PwC, I think you have a lot of case studies and examples for us. Tikran, sorry to go back to this. I know you covered it briefly, but given how key your role is and how fast Yerevan and Armenia is changing and transforming, can we go back to your last point in a little bit more depth? So what are the top 3 to 5 changes that can be made, that are being made, that you're looking to make top high-level changes to Yerevan and in turn Armenia to make it a lot more green, a lot more smarter, a lot more AI-centric, using data, probably with a team of quants and data scientists and looking at data differently and really helping transform and making Armenia and Yerevan smarter. But let's focus a little bit with this question on energy as well. So in my mind, there's solar, there's wind, there's hydro, there's geothermal and biofuels, which are the top 5 energies being transformed. So over to you, Tikran. A couple of insights would be amazing. Thank you.
Thank you. So I would probably outline the first and the most important priority, and that is the general mobility. And that is an issue not only for Yerevan, but practically for all the capitals in Europe. We were in Rome last week, and they have even deeper issues on mobility. Practically, what everyone, each and every capital is doing is trying to go from the vehicles, from the cars, to the public transportation, from the public transportation to the bikes and probably scooters, and from those to just the pedestrian mobility. That is like the general kind of steps that each and every city is trying to take. And practically what we've tried to do, we've tried to focus on our public transportation system. And practically we have a lot of kind of interesting technologies already inbuilt in that system. And after that, of course, after we have the public transportation system in place, which is we're pretty close to finalizing. I think we might need a couple of years more. But after that, we will be focusing on kind of going to the next steps, going to the bikes and making, well, we do it of course simultaneously, but practically we might focus after the finalization of this reform. So that is the most important part, I think. I would like to comment on the electric vehicles and what the city is doing and what the government has done since 2018. You might notice that there are lots of electric vehicles in the city. I think per capita, Yerevan and Armenia is one of the mostly saturated EV countries and cities in the world. That is because we have an exemption from customs, from VAT since 2018. We have exemption from parking fees for the electric vehicles. And this gave a boost to the industry, and this gave a boost to the fleet. I mean, everyone kind of makes sense to change your petrol-based car onto an EV car. And the second point is, of course, the charging. We have, of course, charging stations throughout the city, but practically what we are thinking to do is to create charging near the street lights, like the simplest solution. So give the opportunity for the people who have the EV to charge their cars near, like, you know, where they park near the street lights. So that is like the simplest solution, and that is where the city is going to head.
Wow. Yet another example of smart policy by Tikran and his team the last few years, so congratulations. Looking forward to seeing what's next for Armenia and Yerevan. Thank you. So let's move on to a really interesting question. I think Jacqueline might want to take this one, given it covers AI, AGI, and IA. So the question is, on the topic of AI and tech, what else can be done with disruptive high-growth technologies such as AI, Jacqueline, to transform and strengthen cities like Yerevan? I'm thinking really broad, cross-segment here, so cyber, security, defense, transport, payments, so payments, fintech, water, recycling, government portals, platforms, personalization, right? So let's think really broad, social and business life. Do you want to try and answer this one? A little bit complex.
Okay. I think when we talk about AI, we should also think at differentiating different parts. Nowadays, we hear a lot about AGI, which is artificial general intelligence, and it requires enormous capacities to store data, computers to process it, the scientists to analyze them. It's very expensive, and there's a massive amount of money invested by the private companies in these domains, such as, you know, Bill Gates, Elon Musk, and all. And this approach is, in a lot of ways, overpowering the human. When we think of what we live presently, which is called more narrow AI, which is algorithms that are targeted to solve specific problems, such as the ones we already use, ChatGPT or Siri, etc. These are the kind that can also be developed through OpenAI, and this is where education and Fab Labs and digital education can come in to empower the learner and the citizen, because then they can actually design the city's services together, its infrastructure, circulation, distribution of resources, etc. And I believe that this part, which also works a lot in collaboration with educational establishments, in you know, universities and research labs, they should have equal funds so that we have an equilibrium. And this to empower people and the individual. And now there's an approach proposed by an MIT professor, Patty Maas, who actually talks about IA, which is intelligence augmented.
I thought intelligence arménienne, but I'm wrong.
That's really I like very much.
Just a joke. A half joke.
Because actually we have the intelligence arménienne and quite a bit in our country. So this IA, which looks at an extension of the repetitive tasks that we do, we no longer want to do, inviting collaboration, creativity, and designing together the process so that you really are an active participant. It's something that we are looking forward to working on, and we started a collaboration with the Ministry of Education to bring virtual labs to schools, because also the particularity of Fab Labs is that it has a seamless life between the virtual and the real. And computation, just like the speaker, the keynote speaker yesterday said, is coming to our built environment. So everything you build, you create, has its digital twin. And very soon we will have Yerevan also as a digital city online. So we need to learn to be comfortable, to be creative, and to collaborate, to work together. But these new skills are essential, and right now we have only a few that are trained in this capacity. We work directly with the MIT Mother Fab Lab, and we have become a regional hub for Armenia and all its neighboring countries to actually disperse this education.
That's really great, Jacqueline, to hear how active you are in this space, so thank you. I think Shant and Nina, you have a lot of experience and learnings to share from what you've seen in the US. And Shant, you mentioned something about Vahakni SEZ. Maybe take the floor for 2 minutes.
SEZ is Special Economic Zone. And what we've decided to do is look around the world and see what cities have developed much faster than the rest of the country. And the mother of special economic zones was actually created in China. Hong Kong was created by having a land lease from China to England, where they developed this incredibly successful city. So Hong Kong was the first model, and China has 7 more special economic zones: Guangdong, Shenzhen. We have a paper that we could give you, one pager that summarizes all of this. If any of you want that, please see me after the conference, after the panel. The second country that we like to look at, or city, is Singapore, as Hazam had mentioned. And the third is Dubai. These cities have grown, and they will be a big beneficiary from the AI revolution. AI needs data. You can't do anything in AI without that raw data. Before AI became popular, they were talking about data mining, and that is called big data. Big data is what you need. Data is like the garbage industry. Data was just storage until people started to mine that data for all of the algorithms that are being used inside of AI. Now, taking these cities, what we want to do is integrate the data collection process with everyday life of the citizens inside of Vahakni. And I think this could obviously cascade into Yerevan and the rest of the country. Personally, I think Armenia should be one big special economic zone. We're a small country, we have the opportunity, we have some weaknesses, and we have strengths. And one of our weaknesses is we don't have access to ports. However, with data technology, with coding, our exports can go through a fiber optic line or through a satellite. So you take your weaknesses and you turn them into your strengths. And I believe a process of osmosis has happened to Armenia, and that's why we have this fast, nicely developing technology sector. Our exports can be done with the push of a button. No ports, let's focus on data and coding, IT technology. That is the product that we want to have inside of our special economic zone in Vahakni. We can do AI, we can do cloud computing, we can do blockchain. All of these technologies of today and the future are within Armenia's reach. That's why this conference is here.
Absolutely.
It's in our reach.
Absolutely. Thanks, Shant. You know, on TV, they talk about the Kardashians. Right now, we have the Hovnanians. So maybe, Nina, would you like to comment?
Well, Shant said a lot, but another thing that's very important is we need a lot of commerce, and we need to be attractive to the world. Having a special economic zone in Armenia will bring a lot of the biggies to Armenia, to invest in Armenia, to live in Armenia. Vahakni's plan is to be very livable. It's walk to work, walk to school, very green, very comfortable, but it builds commerce, and it puts us on the map. And it also makes us part of the crossroads to peace. When we have free ports, when we're involved in commerce, and we're on the map, it brings a more peaceful environment and equation to the country.
Great, thank you. Without going into details, an SEZ type environment, a low tax regime for the startup ecosystem is definitely my only ask to the Armenian government and our ministries that I've met for FinTech Armenia or any other AI, biotech, or other type of cluster, technology cluster that we're looking to build out of Armenia to strengthen our nation quickly. So moving on to ethics and data governance, right? So ethics, a big topic in business and for us all personally in our daily lives. But ethics and data governance from a city perspective. So what important considerations and risks should we be mindful of when transforming and modernizing cities with technologies such as AI? I think, Jacqueline, you might want to start this one off, and then we'll go on to the Hovnanians, not the Kardashians, sorry. And then Hazem. Thank you.
I think that it all comes to making sure that we empower the citizen, the individuals, that we are in charge of producing what we need, when we need, where we need. I agree with Shant that this new technology and AI that allows every object to have its digital twin, we can produce and manufacture what we need locally. And here, I would say I'm more looking towards the city of Barcelona and how their super fab lab, so the difference between a super fab lab and a fab lab is a super fab lab builds machines that build machines, so they can equip all of their infrastructure of education with the labs that empower people to go from idea to prototyping. And the mayor of Barcelona has taken the challenge that within the next 40 years, working with this network of fab labs connected to researchers all around the world, will be able to produce whatever they need, when they need, without extra footprint on through logistics, transportation, and being independent. So the model of Barcelona is extremely inspiring. So that's one I would like to think about, because it's also giving the power to the citizens and the new upcoming force that is their young intellectuals. And I think we are very rich with human resources in Armenia, and that's definitely a model we can implement here.
Yeah, I'm with you. Any other comments on ethics and data governance in this transformational phase from the panel? Yeah, Hazem.
Maybe a lot has been said about ethics yesterday, so I'll maybe focus on governance. One of the most important barriers to address is data governance, especially if you are in a system where there are national data, city-level data, and then if you have private developers, basically, that have their own data. And it becomes quite important, that we're not only looking at smart or cognitive cities programs at a city level, but also to understand what's happening at the national level. And we have so many different models in Japan, in South Korea, and in Portugal, for example, where we concluded something similar a couple of years ago, where you define very clearly, how the data sharing is going to happen from the national level to the city level. And even within the city level, many mayors have the difficulty of getting all the city departments to share data amongst each other and to access this data in a horizontal citywide data platform so that you're able actually to understand what's happened in a city collectively and to augment that with national data typically related to security or some other domains depending on the national governance, and link that in the bottom with the data that's coming from smart districts or even smart buildings. And having a clear definition of all of that is one of the most important key success factors, together with financing, leadership, and others.
Fascinating. Tigran, any insights to share based on Hazem's comments?
I think I've shared too much today.
Yeah.
Generally, I think I just want to go back to the data that kind of, everything, every system that we build, be it AI, be it machine learning, whatever it is, so is based on the data and the accuracy of the data. So the collection of this data is also another challenge for, and if we think that like even the major capitals in Europe collect all the data accurately, that's not the case. Practically, I think what the cities firstly need to focus on is on this data collection, and this data collection is the base of each and every other system. So practically whatever we build on top of that kind of is based on the accuracy of that data. So, and this data collection process is probably the key for the decision makers, and after that, because like you can build a system, you can build AI tools on top of like whatever data you have, but the important part is what kind of data, what kind of accuracy of data you have.
Great. What kind of data and what we do with it. And I liked what Hazem said about interconnectivity at the data level between different cities and getting synergies of scale. So final question. So any comments, any further examples of how we can make better use of AIoT, big data, cloud, 5G, right? So taking the technology discussion all the way up to cloud level and 5G, being very futuristic and definitely coming our way for cities like Yerevan to become smarter and better. I was thinking maybe Hazem, Shan, Tigran, and then we can start wrapping up.
If I may, Hazem talked about the interoperability. So generally, the data sharing is also very, very important because like, be it the municipality, be it like, I don't know, urban development committee, whatever ministry we have that has the accurate data, this data needs to be interconnected to the interoperability system. And again, this is not the case, not only in Armenia, but also in other cities and other countries as well. So we have the interoperability system, of course, which we kind of use, but practically, for instance, like we worked hard with Cadastre Committee to get the information of Cadastre, which is kind of, a challenge not only for us, but also for the other cities. So The other thing is, of course, like this exchange of information and the exchange of data and this interoperability systems that need to be in place for all of these tools to work properly.
Amazing to see next generation transformation of Yerevan through people like Tigran with his technical and tech background. So thanks, Jacqueline.
I would like to give an example that might make things more concrete on all the things that we heard this morning, and to also make room for the arts and the artists, because they show to us the world in different and interesting angles. So, for example, on a university campus, a few artists and architects came together and they built a beautiful big balloon that was connected to the electrical consumption of the campus and the dormitories. So we always tell the students, please remember to turn off the lights when you leave your space or the conference room, etc. And all these very, very small gestures that we don't think about doing systematically, in the end, accumulate to a big expense. So the electricity consumption was connected to this big balloon that started to be red. And as everybody was turning on and off their lights and they would see this big data being visually communicated, everybody started to be aware, and the consumption of electricity went down really drastically. But the artist had found a way of showing how we collectively, with these small gestures, can have an impact. So I want to say AI is also very much entering the domain of the arts and bringing to us information on the shape that allows us to collectively be impactful. This is just one example of many that come up.
Mm-hmm. Great. If there's no other comments, we didn't discuss this one, but a closing question. It's, I think more for Nina, Shant, Hazem, and Jacqueline, given we have Tigran on this panel. What would you say are the top 2 areas you would focus on to make Yerevan and Armenia smarter? And I think a lot of this has been covered and is probably in Tigran's roadmap, but just want to hear it one more time before we conclude. Start with Jacqueline. Top 2. Transformational technologies, areas, like 2 bullet points, what would they be?
For me, it's really reskilling society, and from kindergarten, but also vocational schools. One reason that I see a lot of even, the massive amount of people who go to work abroad could be stopped if we look at what are the needs of our cities, our villages, and how fast we have become digital and we don't even realize it, or some digital applications we should bring so that we can create vocational education. And just to remind people, vocational education is a training of 6 months to a year that gives immediate skills for immediate employment. And it doesn't have to stop, of course, if people want to continue, but also connected to the needs of society, so we retain our workforce at all levels. And most of all, we use the brain power of all citizens, because creativity doesn't happen only in the educational system. Every people that we meet in communities have ideas. If we give them the tools and the place to express, we would be really gathering a lot of richness.
Got it. So your 2 bullets are education and society enablement.
Education, society enabling, but also I really would like to build a super fab lab in Armenia to empower all communities.
Let's do it. I know you're on the way, so Hazem, your turn. 2 bullets.
With the caution that we're already 8 minutes over
Yes.
time.
Oh, we are?
And with the caveat of a very scientific observation of one day in Armenia and Yerevan, I'll venture to give 2 recommendations based on my 40 years of interaction with the Armenian diaspora in my home countries, Egypt and the US. So the first one, for Yerevan, turn your city into an urban living lab. I think you have the ecosystem and what it takes to do that, and that will be a major differentiator. And then for Armenia, start a national smart/cognitive cities program, because it is much easier if you do it consciously from day one at the national level than to try to gather all the information from dispersed success cases.
Great. I think given Tikran's comments today, I think we're well on the way, and that's accelerating. Over to you, Shant.
Under the umbrella of something I'd like to steal from the American campaign, the US campaign for president, let's use the umbrella of making Armenia great again. Let's focus on that. And in focusing on that, let's look at what we have and not focus on what we don't have. We have a lot of resources here in Armenia. We have intellectual capital. We have great communication lines. We can always improve them. Let's improve our communication skills through education, through partnerships, through alliances. We have tentacles in the diaspora that are untapped.
Big time.
Let us embrace those tentacles, those pockets of intellectual and financial capital, and let's make Armenia great again.
And it's happening. Thanks, Shant. Let's close with Nina and maybe Tikran, and then we're done.
Well, I think that the transportation, that not just for Yerevan, but the whole country, if we could do things like a monorail, one of those maglev things that have I'm also a technological dinosaur, but that hyperlink, if we could connectivity between the different regions, because even though there's been great advances in the road systems, a lot of improvements, it still takes a long time. It's a mountainous country. It takes a long time to get from one place to another, even though it's a very small country. So I think the connectivity is very important. We have a dry port that was approved in Gyumri.
The first says
it's
approval,
the first, I was just about to say that. It was the first says, and that could be a great step towards building commercial success, and that commercial success through faster transportation and clean transportation would really build those crossroads of peace.
Great. Tikran, can I ask you to close the panel with some concluding remarks? Thank you so much.
Well, thank you for the last comments. I think, well, practically, so Yerevan and Armenia is a living organism. So practically whatever we do today might be obsolete tomorrow. And I think the most important part is that whatever we do, we kind of try to leap. We kind of try to do what needs to be done even tomorrow. So, and not even kind of focus on the kind of all the steps that all the other countries and cities have gone through, but try to go like, you know, the first tier, like the solutions that just have been created, and that gives advantage. So the GIS systems that I introduced that are already in place in Yerevan are not being used by a lot of other, you know, capitals in Europe. So they're kind of couple of steps behind. And this kind of information, this kind of platforms gives us a lot of answers to like the questions that haven't been solved for decades. And I think like introducing the technology, collecting the right data, making people participate in in those projects, like the Active Citizen platform, like they give the information from the streets, from whatever they see. So that makes a lot, you know, that makes these projects successful.
Wonderful. Ladies and gentlemen, I've learned a lot. I hope you have too, and you found it insightful. Please thank the panel. Thank you.